This is Morgan Creasel reporting for NewsJunkie.net. I'm here with Dr. Michelle Thompson. Michelle is the Director of Conservation Biology at the San Diego Natural History Museum. She leads the Healthy Canyons Initiative, which aims to fill gaps in data on plant and animal life in San Diego's canyons, as well as inform conservation effort of those canyon ecosystems. How are you doing today, Michelle?
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. So I wanted to start by asking when the museum became interested in studying the canyons and how the initiative got started.
Well, I could go way back because this really started in the 80s. As San Diego became more and more urbanized and houses and buildings were built up, we have a pretty unique topography in San Diego. So we have a bunch of flat mesas and then you see these steep canyon areas. It was just easier to build on the mesas and harder to build in the canyons. So what was left in a lot of urban San Diego are these canyon islands of green spaces, little fragments surrounded by houses in other urban areas. As that was happening in the 80s, a scientist by the name of Michael Soule, who's from Southern California, saw these islands and thought, wow, like, what's going on with the plants and animals? Do bigger islands as fragments have more animals or less animals? Asking ecology questions that people ask on regular islands and putting it into the framework of urban islands in San Diego. So he started the research, and him and a group of students and biologists were working on mainly birds and mammals. And they predicted some birds and mammals will do better and some will do worse over time. And that's where it started. And this is also important.
Was he
Yeah.
with the museum? Sorry to interrupt.
He is not, no, but he had been like a long time since he's been a kid, had visited the museum and was associated. He had taught for some UC schools over time and many other universities. So, like loose affiliation associations, but not working for the museum at that time. But that really got this work started. And he also went on to become one of the main founders of institutionalizing conservation biology as a formal discipline in science. A lot of what I'm doing now as the director of conservation biology and what I'm doing in the Healthy Canyons Initiative all started from concepts in San Diego originally. So now, decades later, we get to look back and see, have things changed? Did those predictions hold up? And how do we get people involved in this sort of nature fragment-based research outside of people's doors? Before I came to the museum, there was a pilot study that ran up against the pandemic, and like many different studies that are supposed to involve the community, they met with a bunch of challenges, but still made some great progress in Two Canyons. I came on to the museum in, gosh, it's been 3.5 years now, and right away it seemed like a great project, exactly the type of thing that I thought my department, conservation biology, should be doing, and I've been working on the initiative ever since.
Gotcha. So were they working with community scientists from the beginning, or when did that become a thing?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't have a lot of documentation on if they've involved a lot of community scientists. I know a lot of students were involved. Since the museum has formally started their Healthy Canyons initiative, the community part has always been really important from the start. A lot of our projects, we're a museum, we're very public facing. A big goal is to get people involved.
Yeah, totally. So when did the formal program start?
The most formal part of the Healthy Canyons program started around 2020.
Gotcha.
Although some of our researchers have been working in canyons in other ways over time, but this actual initiative started in about 2020.
Okay. Wow. So right during the pandemic then.
Yes.
Yeah, what was that like? Were people kind of looking for stuff to do, or was it harder to find participants or
I wasn't working at the museum during that time, but what I'm told by the project manager at the time were people were really excited. It took a lot of extra work to make sure things were getting done safely and spacing and all the policies that were in place at the time.
so I want to ask why community science? What is the reasoning behind trying to bring in people? I know you're a museum, so that's already part of your DNA, but maybe for academics who are less familiar with it, what's your pitch?
I'm a conservation biologist. People aren't going to want to conserve what they don't know, what they don't value, parts of their life that they don't participate or feel like affect or benefit them every day. That's the biggest reason. I think science is for everyone. I see people's faces light up when they get to participate. Specifically for urban biodiversity, this is the nature that's outside of people's houses. They should feel like they can interact with it if they want to and know how to interact with it. What we find is people don't. A lot of people think we're hauling equipment into the canyons like traps, for animals and temperature data loggers and things like that. And people are like, "Oh, what are you doing?" We explain to them, and then they go, "Oh," we ask, "Have you ever walked in this canyon?" They're like, "Oh, no, I don't really know that much about it, but I live in this neighborhood." And we're like, "Oh, well, the trails are open to you." And some people don't realize that, which I find extremely surprising. There's many other barriers. People don't have time and things like that. Just those informal conversations have lit a fire under us to really try and get out there and get people connected to their local green spaces.
Do you find people are more hesitant to interact with nature, or is it more like they go overboard and maybe don't interact with it safely, accidentally destroying habitats?
It's the former. People are either nervous. We get questions like, what are the trails like? Are things going to scratch up against my leg? Anything from people just not being used to nature to general safety as well. How safe are the trails? Where do I start? Is there a map? Usually people don't have the information to interact with these spaces and therefore feel uncomfortable. When they come out with us, it opens up a door. I can do this.
You come across the advice online, touch grass, but it's funny how people don't even know how to approach that. So you're giving them a structure. Here's how you touch grass scientifically.
Yes.
So are there concerns about data quality when it comes from community members and people who aren't trained like you guys are?
Yeah, I think there's, of course, we offer a menu of different ways people can interact because not everyone can spend extra hours training to learn a specific technique. So, for example, iNaturalist, which is an app that anyone can use when they're walking around to take photos of plants or animals and it posts online. There's an AI model that can give people a guess to what they're looking at. And then also researchers like us will go online and curate them like, oh, that's this species. And so that's one way to interact and help improve quality of data while also giving people support in learning that might not have a bunch of extra time to train and come out with you to do more structured surveys. The other options we have are being trained and coming out with us. We're all a team together. You're looking out for each other and making sure the data is collected. You have the type of community science projects where we train people and then we send them off with equipment and tell them to get the data back to us. And so that those projects are the most important to train properly, design properly so that's easy for people. People pick up on things quite easily. We're not sending them off to a lab. We're usually sending them with a little kit to collect something and send back to us.
So you're having researchers go through data. Okay, what is the way that most people interact with the program? Is it through iNaturalist or is it through your more hands-on programs? Yeah, where does most of your data from this come from?
Well, it's spread all over, but I will say that I'd probably the most people that interact with this program is through iNaturalist just because so many people all across San Diego can contribute one observation or 100 observations. The other thing we do are bio blitzes, and we get a number of people. For example, there's a border bio blitz, which celebrates areas along the border, or City Nature Challenge, which celebrates all cities. Many cities participate in that. Sometimes we'll run guided hikes, but we call it a bio blitz. So everyone's taking pictures of different things and recording. And so that I think is another way that we get a lot of people involved. And then we do have a number of people that are involved in the heavier trained aspect of it too, but less because not everyone could come out once a week with the botany team to document plants, or not everyone has time on the weekend sometimes when we have events to be trained in community science.
So iNaturalist is the most accessible, so that's where the most people go. And what do you guys do with this data once it's collected? Is it available on the public database, or do you use it for your research?
Yeah, it's all of the above. iNaturalist, we have a project. The data is available packaged as the Healthy Canyons Initiative project right away for anyone. We also collect data and curate it and make sure it's all clean and analyze it, put it up on our resources webpage. We have other resource web pages like Plant Atlas. The curator of botany will make sure it's on his webpage too, because people access things different ways. Even if it's the same information, we try and get it out there as much as possible. We regularly communicate to our community science project members. They make sure that they get reports. Here's a preliminary report. Here's an updated report. Here's your personalized report of what you collected versus the whole of the project. We're still collecting data, but everything is to go up on the website and out in scientific publications, but also presentations and more publicly accessible infographics and things like that. The community science data, it's not separate in many ways. Sometimes it's a specific project, but that's the full life cycle of a scientific project. One example is us collecting eDNA, which is people, plants, or animals have DNA, and so you can swab, they're shedding feathers or fur or skin cells, and you can take a swab. And in this case, we were collecting spider webs because it's sticky, so it might collect the eDNA very well. That was a whole project to understand what can these spider webs tell us about what's in these canyons? Can we say something about what's in canyons versus what's in people's yards right next to canyons? Are they extensions of these green spaces? Are there different things that we're picking up in either or? That was a whole scientific study, and the community participated in the whole thing, right? It wasn't separate or an additional add-on. With iNaturalist, we only have so many eyes and time to be out in the canyons, and we pick up a lot of extra species just by community members happening to, be there at the right time and a snake goes by. For secretive species, we don't always get them, even over and over again with standardized surveys. So the community really helps over time as build that information.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you were looking into how does the eDNA found in canyons differ from other urban areas? What did you find?
Well, we're still analyzing the data.
Okay.
And here's why. So we hope to finish that up. I mean, we gave a preliminary list where we had to pick just a couple species to test. What we found is mostly insects, which you would expect because spider webs are built to trap insects for the spiders. But we're
Mhm.
also picking up some birds and mammals. We need a localized, you can think of it as a library, like a local reference library of genetic data for us to compare to. And right now we're blasting it against these large global databases. Sometimes
Mhm.
we can't get very specifics. It'll be a canine mammal or a gull, a bird. We're pretty sure we can get it more localized, but we need to make sure we have, and if you can imagine all the species in San Diego to build that reference database, it's taking time. That's all to say that we learned that we can pick up many different things. It looks like there's probably a difference between yards and canyons, but there's overlap as well. We're now looking to find ways to build that reference database for future monitoring and hopefully to expand the community project. A lot of the members came back to us and said, "Hey, we want to do this more." So I
Yeah,
guess that
it
worked.
sounds really fun. I mean, like spider webs are an easy thing to spot, and like collecting them, I can see why people like that so much.
And actually, the people who we collaborate with people up in LA, and the interesting thing is, this ended up, we caught it because there was an undergraduate presenting at a conference, their honors thesis, and trying this out. Some people in my department were talking with the undergraduate student, being like, oh my gosh, I think the community could do this. It ended up being a collaboration between LA and us and the community. And the fact that it was from an undergrad project is really exciting. Like a student really gave us the idea for this whole thing.
So, like, no other study have tried spider webs as this collector before?
There's a handful of research out there. We found around, at the time we were starting this, about seven-ish papers published. I'm sure there are maybe more in press, but it hadn't been used very much at all.
What made people think of turning to the community for it in the first place? Was it just because it would be cool, or was it more like we don't really have the resources to check this out otherwise?
I mean, yeah, we're interested in a couple different groups looking at people's yards and the canyons. And of course, it's people's property, it's people's homes. And so, really, like, we don't have
Oh.
the resources just to stroll up to someone's house and
Yeah.
sample without their knowledge. And of course, we would want them to be involved as much as possible. And so, we're doing a similar project with birds, but with recorders, where community members host their own little recorder in their yard, and we have them in the canyons, and you can pick up bird song and figure out what's there. So we thought we could replicate that with spider webs, and like everyone has spider webs in their yard. So
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so do you lead like any of the hikes and the BioBlitzes and stuff like that?
yes, we do as a team because we usually split up into groups, and it'll be me and someone else leading like one group and another one of my colleagues leading another group. We also team up with our Canyoneers, which is a group that leads hikes throughout San Diego. They've been active for about 50 years, and that's just volunteers associated with a NAT that lead hikes around the community. So we always try and invite them in since they kind of do this full time as well. Maybe not the community science part of it, the actual science project, but they're leading groups around all the time.
And so what's it like being out there with the community volunteers? You said there was a lot of students. What other people show up, like families? Yeah, what's that like?
It's a big mix of people. Families will show up, and that's always fun. I've definitely had the comment from family members, parents, that they really appreciate the opportunity to learn with their kids because they're learning too. They've commented that the interaction and the conversation between them and their own kids in the learning process is really rewarding, and they've learned more from their kids because sometimes their kids will be like, "Oh, I learned in biology class," and it starts a whole conversation within that family. We get a lot of students involved. We try and work with teachers. We try and blast the information out as far and wide as possible. So some curious neighbors show up, which of course we love. Sometimes they'll just see a big group of us out there and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And we'll just be like, "All right, well, if you want to come with us, like
Awesome.
if you have nothing else planned today, like come learn about your local nature."
Wow, that's really cool. What kind of feedback from the people who just like wander in? What do they say about it?
So far, it's all been positive and they would like more support. So we're trying to build more resources, field guides. Most people have iPhones and so they can use iNaturalist, but not everyone has an iPhone or they don't want their kids to have phones. And so we're trying to find other ways to build resources. Mostly the feedback is like, how can you do more of this? How can we know about these sorts of events? We get a lot of questions after these sorts of things about how can, if my kids want to get involved later, like at high school or college in an internship in this sort of career, like how do I direct them towards that? Those are a lot of questions that I get, which I think is exciting because I don't know, if you're walking around on a hike and then it makes you want to support your child in pursuing a biology career, then that's always fun. So
Definitely. So, yeah, I started being curious about this because I've been covering the way that the federal research system has been attacked and is hit really hard by funding cuts and all that stuff. I'm looking at examples of community science programs as ways that some of the data collection that has been hit can maybe be crowdsourced. I wanted to get your take on how reproducible, that's a smarter word, is your kind of program to other institutions, to other natural history museums, maybe, or maybe some kind of community-based science club. How feasible do you think that is? I guess is my first question, and maybe we can get into like a little bit of advice as well.
sure. I mean, I think it's definitely people could probably find it fairly easy to replicate a lot of these different projects. And there's a lot of lessons learned too, or like we should have done it this way, or, we're really glad we did this. And actually, I'm part of an alliance with other museums in California called the Urban Nature Alliance. And so we share best practices with LA County and Cal Academy up in San Francisco. And those are a lot of those conversations because other museums do a ton of community science as well. And so that's been useful to have colleagues to share that information. And we see that you're doing this, maybe we could tweak it and replicate it. A lot of times we have a strong connection with the community, but local community-based organizations that are rooted in the community for years, we really try and work with them because on any funding cycle or project cycle, your time is limited and it could take years to build trust and relationship with community members and understand their needs instead of us dropping into wherever and hoping we're going to get feedback from community members in a couple days to design a project. And so we also really try and work with those community-based organizations. And hopefully, then those community-based organizations don't have to think about the science part of it as much. They can really lean into and spend like their time on focusing on making sure the community is getting what they need. So that collaboration has been really important, not even necessarily replicating a bunch of organizations replicating exactly what the museum is doing, but maybe a bunch of groups of organizations replicating the collaboration between science institutions and community institutions.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, how did those collaborations come about and what organizations are you working with?
We work with a ton, so I don't want to call out any specific one, but it's over time. A lot of us, we're all interested in very similar things. We're either in some sort of meeting about conservation in San Diego or nature in San Diego. San Diego is a small world, so you meet people over time and slowly you build those relationships. Like, oh, I see your organization is interested in this. Let's have lunch. Our museum is old, right? 1874. And people before me have built relationships. And so that's been really useful because they'll send me an email and then I can connect with other organizations. At San Diego Natural History Museum, try and convene meetings and invite a whole bunch of different organizations in. I run a symposium called State of Biodiversity Symposium. And that's a huge thing where we try and bring the public in and a whole bunch of other organizations, whether they're science-based, community-based, environmental-based, government-based, and as a networking spot where you can talk about some of those sorts of connections. I think that's been really helpful. Making the connections is the important thing. San Diego is smaller than you think. So we talk to each other a lot, maybe not as much as we should.
And then the Urban Nature Alliance, their best practices and lessons learned. Do you know if there's any public-facing resources to come out of that up anywhere?
Well, it's a new thing that we're starting up. And so we've had a couple of meetings to establish what's our mission, what are our values, how often do we chat with each other, how formal or informal is it? And so we do have some information on our webpage at San Diego Natural History Museum, and we're looking to put out some additional materials later this year.
Which webpage is that? Do you know off the top of your head?
It is connected to the conservation biology website because it's on my department website.
Is there anything else that I missed? Anything else you want to shout out about the museum or your work, research, the community?
Just that whoever wants to get involved, our information's on the webpage. There's an email there. Join the INAT project. Those INAT observations help us a ton as scientists, but also to give information back to the community.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.